Hello everyone. In the last video we looked at the way LazyCam operates and what the buttons on the screen were and what they meant. In this video we'll look at some operations, and we'll also try to touch on whatever's changed since the last video. As most of you know, the GUI is in a process of change as we discover the bugs and find better ways to let you do something. So there's a few buttons which may have appeared which weren't there before, most of them on the right hand toolbar over here. Let's go through a couple of them so that you're aware. I'm going to open up a DXF here. I'm just going to select a simple DXF with 3 squares in it. Now, first of all, on the screen up in the upper right hand corner, you can see a little bar and it says 0.98. That means that the distance of a line that long, which is, what looks like an inch, is approximately 0.98 of an inch on this screen. The reason it doesn't say inches, that could be 0.98 millimeter. It all depends on what you're drawing in. LazyCam still doesn't care much about what unit you're using. It will work as well in inches as millimeters. So it's just simply 0.98 for that length of a line. That can assist you sometimes if you're looking at playing with the program and say, what size tool should I use to pocket something like this box? As before, if you click on a chain, you'll see the selection at the bottom switch to the extensive chain, and it tells you what the starting coordinates and ending coordinates of the chain are, the order in that particular layer that it's going to be cut, etc., etc. For example, we can see it's the second item to be cut in this layer. Actually, the third item, because the first item is item 0. And you can visually see that on the screen because the rapid is going to this object first, then to this object, and then finally to the object that we've selected. So this object here would be in order in layer 1, and this object would be order 0. So 0 cut, first cut, second cut. If you click on a layer, in this case layer 0, you can see at the bottom of the screen we have our tool selection, our cut height, cut start, and cut depth. So that takes care of setting the depth per pass and so on for a particular layer. As before, if you want to change the order of a layer, for example, if we click on this chain number 2, we can see it's being cut second. Not only can we see that by looking at the order and layer, but you can also see it by looking up in the project tab and seeing that we start cutting at chain 0, we move to chain 2, and then we move to chain 1. You can grab a chain and move it up the list to change the order of cut. So we just changed it so the cut 1 is first, cut 0 is second, and chain 0 is second, and chain 2 is third. If the rapid displays on the screen become distracting, there are 3 press buttons on the right-hand side of the screen which will stay down when you press them. One is rapids on off. If I were to click that button off, you can see it cleans up the screen by removing the rapids. Also, if you don't wish to select chains, but you wish to select entities because you wish to delete something or off of the screen, you could hit the chain entity selector, and now the mouse selects just entities within a chain. By selecting single multiple, you can now select multiple entities, and then you could, for example, delete them by saying remove objects over here on the right hand side of the screen and removing them and they go away. Whenever you've done an operation in LazyCam, usually the oops button will light, and it will allow you, by pressing it, to go back to where you were on the last step. It does remember several steps, and quite often you can go right back to the beginning of your drawing by pushing the oops button repeatedly. Remember that you have a info button on the top which can turn off that layer at the bottom so that you can more easily see your project or perhaps your command tabs. Let's take a look at pocketing first, because this is something that a lot of people have asked, pocketing and offsetting. So I'm going to select a chain, and as you can see I didn't select a chain, I just selected an entity. So we want to go and turn off single multiple and turn back on chain selection so that we can select an entire chain. Now if I go to the pocket screen, I'm going to turn off my info tab so I can see the entire pocket screen. We have a choice between spiral and zigzag pockets. We know that this object is approximately 2 or 3 units long from the bar telling us that 1 inch is about 0.69 on the screen. We could hit Pocket at this point and generate a pocket. Now over here on the Project tab, you can see that we now have a pocket layer, which you could click, and by turning on your info screen, you can now set the tool for it, and then send to all layers so that you've determined that that is the layer depth that we're going to cut everything at. Now, one thing about generating a pocket is you really don't want that outside square that you used to generate the pocket width. You don't want that to cut. So it's a smart idea to click on that, say remove objects, and remove the object. Now you know that you're going to get a proper pocket without having that annoying outside chain being cut. I'm going to oops this a couple times to show you another feature of pocketing, and that is using clamps. If you right-click your mouse anywhere on the screen, you can load a shapefile, which are clamps. These are objects that you pre-draw yourself in a CAD program. They're really created from DXFs, and they allow you to create the shape of a clamp that you may be using to hold your material down. As you can see, just by grabbing a clamp, you can slide it around the screen and move it to the appropriate place on your drawing. If you don't have any shapefiles, which you typically won't in LazyCam by default, you have to create your own, and you do that by simply bringing in a DXF drawing with a drawing of a clamp. Let's pretend for a moment that this square is the drawing or shape of a clamp. Actually, this smaller one might be better. You simply select the chain, right-click, and say Save Chain as a Shapefile. Any chain can be saved as a shape to be used as a clamp later on, or as a pocket inhibitor, depending on how complex you wish to get. In this case, we're going to call this box clamp. And you can see when I did that, the box became a clamp. And it's also in the drawing so that you can use it with any drawing. If we right-click and say Remove Shapes, it goes away. So let's look at this large box we have on the screen and pocket it with a clamp. So I'm going to say Load Shapefile to Screen, and I'm going to select the box clamp that we just made. And we're going to drag it up and put it there. So picture, if you will, that this is a clamp on your mill, which is clamping this some piece of material down, but it's intruding on the area that you wish to pocket. By clicking on the square that you wish to pocket and going to our pocket menu, you can see we have a checkbox, Use Clamps. If it's checked, the system, when it pockets that square, will create 2 pockets. Basically, it will create a main central pocketing, which is this pocket group here, and it will create a pocket underneath the clamp, which means that you can later simply grab your clamp. You could stop the program after it finishes the first pocket, move your clamp, and then continue the program, and it will pocket underneath where the clamp was holding the material. To remove shape files from a screen, just right-click and say Remove Shapes, and they'll go away. Now if we were to remove this outer profile, because again you don't want to cut that, now you have a double pocketing, which takes into account the fact that you're using a clamp and you don't want to destroy your clamp when you're pocketing. I'm going to oops back a few times here, so that actually let's just open that file again. It might be cleaner. Let's open up a file with islands in it, actually. Now here's a file which has objects inside of objects. So if we click that object, for example, and say that we wish to pocket it, we can click Create Islands, and by using Create Islands, we will respect the fact that this square is inside the circle. We create the pocket, and as you can see, it created a pocket. You'll see we're missing a pocket right in this area, and that's because it couldn't fit one, because this square is not actually perfectly centered within that circle. We can oops back out of that. By changing the tool diameter, we could probably come up with a better pocket on that. And there you have it. Now if you have objects inside of objects inside of objects, simply clicking the outside pocket and saying create the pockets will create the pockets not only of the outside area, but also it will pocket out that final inside area to clean that out for you as well. That can be handy when you're doing text operations and you wish to engrave something in the text. Let's go back to our first DXF, where we just have a bunch of squares. And if you wish to pocket out areas around text, you have to pretty much start with an object that you can surround it with. It must be a closed chain. So in this case, I'm going to go to the text box and I'm going to select a font, type the word test, drag box, and I'm simply going to drag it. And as you can see, the word test has appeared. Now, in order to pocket out this test, all we really need to do is select the outside of the box, go to our pocket routine, and after a moment you'll see that we've pocketed out everything around the word test. Now at this point you would delete your outer contour and you'd be ready to engrave that job with the word test standing up at you. Let's oops that for a second though. You may want to move chains around. Now at this point the multiple single button can become important. If we hit single multiple, we can now select all of these chains one at a time, and then hit move chain, mouse move, and we're now free to move this test more centralized to our screen. And if we wish to move one at a time, we can do the same thing. And let's move that S down a little. Now there's where you have to be careful that you're only selecting the chain you want. I only wanted to move one, and I'll move that down here. Now similarly you can use tools like rotate, mouse move, and we can rotate that S around. Let's rotate that T a little bit. And then we'll select all four of them. Incidentally, we have a select in box button in which you could drag to simply select all four items. Say move chain, mouse move, and move it up. Now to pocket that out, we just select the outside edge and say create pocket. And after a moment, we now have our job done. You can also do this with clamps. Again, we can load our shapefile to the screen, load our box clamp. There it is, and we're going to put our box clamp here. I'm not sure what happens if we cross the text, but we'll give it a shot. Actually, that worked very nicely. As you can see, it respected the clamp and it also respected the letters which we were machining out. So now we can get rid of that shape. And you can see that we have two pockets which, when they're both run, will still leave us with the word text, or test rather, sitting up, coming out of the material once you move your clamp. One note here is we have not yet told the machines to, told the post processor to put out the stop command between the two pockets. So when you post your G code, make sure you edit your G code to put an M1 or an M0 just prior to that second pocket being cut. Within the next version coming out, that'll automatically be done for you. Let's take a look at offsets. If we do an offset, we can click on a box. We say we're going to offset this to the outside. Click the offset button and we get an outside edge around that box. If we want to click to the inside, we can just select inside and say create the offset, and we get a box to the inside of the object. This is messing up for some people and I haven't quite figured out why. As you can see, it seems to go to the right direction on my machine. There seems to be an issue with the tolerance of a chain. The line tolerance of a chain can be important. If you're pocketing things and you find, for example, that certain entities don't act properly as islands, look at your Extents tab, and you can see that I have it set for a connection tolerance of 0.0001. With some drawings, your lines may not be touching perfectly, so you may have to increase that number to give the program a set tolerance to use when joining entities into a chain. If you do that and you leave it at too high a number, you may find some operations like pocketing and offsetting get a bit screwy. By setting it back to 0.0001, suddenly you'll find it does the proper offset or pocket. It's not always the problem when you have a problem, but it can be. We have tools now such as Zoom Box, where you can drag a box on the screen and take a look inside just that area. Again, double-clicking takes you back. You can select in a box by dragging a box. Anything which is completely in the box will be selected in case you want to delete multiple objects, etc. Again, you can turn your rapids on or off with your rapids button. If you have selected a group of entities on the screen, rather than clicking them all to deselect them or clicking away, you also have a deselect all button, which can do that for you. Most of the other things in the program have remained the same since the previous video. But setting the properties of a layer has changed, so we should take a look at that. As you can see now, I have multiple layers on the screen of this fake job that we have created. One of the things you want to be sure that you do is delete the originating contours that you used to create various offsets. All you need to do that is to just click on those objects and go over to Remove on the menu and get rid of them, and they're gone. Now the only thing left on our screen are items that we wish to have posted out to Mach 3. To change the order of chains within a layer, you simply grab the chain and move it up, as we've gone through before in the last video. To change the order of layers, you can grab the layer and move it up, and it will set them into layers. So remember that this project tree is in order of layers to be cut, items to be cut, and entities to be cut. It's always in the right layer, so just by grabbing it around you can decide what you wish to cut first. One other thing that I should do in this particular job is delete the text entities, because we use those as islands. We really don't need them in the final job. Your choice, you can either click on the layer name and it will select them, and you can say remove objects, as we've been doing, or you can click on the layer, right click, and say delete layer, and it will go away. Now let's look at the depths of these layers. Most of us, or a lot of us, will end up cutting to one layer depth, so let's see how you do that easily. We click on a layer. It doesn't matter which layer in this case. And you can see we get information such as layer name, cut order. Foam dwell is used in foam cutting. It's the time for the wire to stop being bent after having gone through foam. Don't worry about that for now. It will disappear shortly. This control panel on the layers screen now switches to a different panel depending on whether you're in mill or plasma, foam, or turn. And each one of those will be morphing over time, but this is pretty much the layout we're going to go for mill. Now, rather than set your plunge feed, spindle speed, and all these various variables that we used to have to set individually, we now do it with a tool button. So we click on a tool, and as you can see, I have two test tools in here. Just by clicking on a tool and saying OK, we populate all these fields. The reason we attached it to tools is the tool really controls all of these items. As you can see, the diameter of the tool is set, as well as the posting number. This is because you may have 10 tools in the tool cabinet, but only 3 tools on your mill, because you're reusing 3 of the tools here. For example, you could enter a half-inch tool 3 times. Once a half-inch tool for cutting aluminum, one as a half-inch tool for cutting wood, and another as a half-inch tool for cutting foam. Obviously, for each of those 3 materials, you would want to use a different feed rate, plunge rate, cut per pass, and spindle speed. So you can enter the same tool 3 times. You just want to name it as to the material you're going to use it for. For example, you could name it half-inch tool wood, half-inch tool aluminum, half-inch tool foam. Some people have asked how to rename a tool. You don't rename tools, you just recreate them. If I click on a tool like this 3rd inch end mill, you can see it's got a certain setting of parameters. It's 60 inches per minute, 230 inches per minute plunge speed. Rather ridiculous values because I'm simply playing around in here. But we just press the create button to create a new tool. And I'll call it 1/3 inch aluminum as a test. And as you can see, we now have a 1/3 inch aluminum tool, which has the same settings as that original 1/3 inch end mill that we copied it from. Whenever you create a tool, its values will default to whatever the last tool selected was. So now we have a 1/3 inch aluminum and a 1/3 inch end mill with the same settings, so we can just simply delete the 1/3 inch end mill. So basically we've renamed it to aluminum from end mill. So once you select a tool with the various parameters set, it automatically populates these fields down below, and if you intend to cut the same job on all layers, just hit the Send to All Layers button. You'll get a message on the info window telling you that the data has been set to all layers, and clicking the Layers tab will take you back to where you were. There's only 3 values that you may want to set individually for layers, although oftentimes I'm sure they'll all be the same as well. And that's basically the rapid height, the cut start, and the cut depth. For example, if we put a cut depth of minus 3.0 for this layer, as you can see, we have a per pass depth of 1.15. After changing any of these numbers, hit the Set Layer button, and as you can see, the layer that I've currently selected now is going in 3 passes. The first pass 1.15 inches down, and the next pass the remainder to the 3 inch depth. If those are the values you wish to use for all layers, you can hit the Set All Layers button at this point, and all the layers will automatically get set to the same value. To post to Mach 3, simply press the Post G-code button. It will tell you that the file was created, and if you have Mach 3 open and you've told it to send it to Mach 3 will now have this G-code in its window so that you can check to see if you've done anything wrong or if there's any different way that you would have liked to have done it. Alright, that's it for now. Another video soon. I hope this one helps. Thanks.